Rats with Team 4545 League at ICC, analyzing a game between Fireball and DS Chess Q. This game was played in round 2 of the Team 52 playoffs. Let's have a look. White could have played 2e4 and allowed a Sicilian defense, probably something black welcomed. So we'll admire White for not biting and playing what he wants. Okay, White wants to play like a King's Indian attack formation, it looks like. Black just continues with his development. And soon it takes on the King's Indian defense with colors reversed, or King's Indian attack if you prefer. Okay. Now White's preparing the thematic F4, and Black is preparing the thematic counter of C4. Okay, starting to take on a characteristic of a King's Indian reversed, but there's one major difference in some of the positions that arise. If you happen to see my video titled Lesson 002, I shared a game where I played White against a King's Indian defense. And what happened in that game was the black pawn had gone up to F6, and with colors reversed, and I was illustrating how Black is playing on 3 files and White is playing on 2 files, and the game is considered equal because even though White has, in this case, has 1 less file to play on, the enemy king lies at the end of White's open lines, or which will become open lines. But it turns out in this case the black pawn never gets up to F6, and White is able to play with 3 open files. So theoretically that could be in White's favor, but we'll see when we get there. Okay, looks like White's taking his time. Looks like Black is kind of taking his time, but these are natural moves. Let's see what happens. Okay. Now, a lot of times, I don't know if that exchange on D3 was too quick. A lot of times, the player of Black, in this case, will try to induce one of these white pawns to advance to create a weakness on one of those squares. It doesn't happen until later, and the pawns get locked up. So, alternative candidate moves for Black might be just to try to infest the white position, bring the queen down to C2 and say, well, I'm going to take a lot of your attacking plans away because I'm going to force an exchange of queens. So if Black plays this move, Queen C2 forces a trade of queens, it looks like, unless White can exchange and somehow trap that rook. So how's White going to avoid this? So it's a very interesting question. You must prepare for these things if you're planning an attack. You don't want to get your queen exchanged. So let's think for a moment. What does White do to stop a queen exchange? This knight has no square to go to. That means the rook has to move here, right? And then Queen C2 and Queen E1. Well, we've avoided the queen exchange, but Black is sitting down on the 7th rank, so Black could play A5 here, and White can't take the pawn because the knight is loose. So now Black is threatening to further infest the position and play Bishop B4. So let's suppose White goes about his business. This is just a sample line. I don't know where it's going. Just the first thought that came to my mind. Okay, now the queen out to H4. Whoops, knight falls. Okay, can't do that. Gotta go here. Alright. Look at this. Free pawn. And hopefully the white attack is worth that pawn. This one is doomed as well. It sure looks like. Well, let's see. Knight e1, well, you just take it and grab the other pawn. Okay, black, you missed a great chance. Trade queens. Alright, let's go back. Okay, the white attack continues. Black keeps playing on the queen side. And here come the pawns. Black goes after d3. White holds on. a4, h5. Now here's where I said that white has all three files to play on, and it's still there. Now b3, and now the pawns get locked, and black's shot his guns over on the queen side, and there's only one thing left, and that's occupation of c2. Well, gee, we could have done that a few moves ago when all the white pawns and knights were back where they were. So let's see what happens. Now rook e8 might not be the right move because white gets exactly what he wants here. It might be a time to play f6 here and try and get into the idea where white's down to two open files to play on. Like for instance, let's back it up so I can play it. Okay, white probably doesn't want to play g6. Black just locks everything up, and white's going to be forced to sacrifice on h6 if he wants any kind of an attack. So now the game is going to swing around where black tries to occupy c2, and for white to try to avoid that is going to have to play rook e2 and knight e1 to keep heavy pieces out. But white would have to, oops, on f6, white could let it sit there. He could try a tricky move like h6. He could exchange, all kinds of possibilities. White still has his thematic attacking chances here, but the idea of f6 is just to cut one open file off instead of giving white all of them. Okay, now g6, and I won't be able to look at every possibility here, but we can consider some certain candidate moves that might work. Often when a pawn comes down our throat like this, we just park the king over in the corner and let that pawn sit. It acts in a way like one of our pawns, and we take it much later in the game. No hurry, it's not going anywhere. But it's just a potential candidate move. Oops. Okay, so he takes, and black went ahead and took, and this seems thematic because it's trying to open up more lines, and black defends and black takes. So now it turns out white is down to his two open files unless he sacrifices this pawn, which might be an idea because it gives the knight on g3 a nice square to hop into. But one thing, look at the white back rank. There's a lot of guys sitting back there. So far, white hasn't developed his queen bishop and his queen rook yet, and black should be okay here. That's just my general impression. So somewhere soon he makes an error. Let's see what happens. Knight g5. Okay, get the pieces out. Knight d7. What other moves are there? f6. Well, you can let him go to e6. It just, like I say, it gets back to that theme where you just leave white two open files. So, anyway, now the king looks a little exposed there. There's an immediate check if we want it. Everything else is pretty much ready to come into play, and I don't know if white wants to play rook c1 and maybe help the queen get to a better square, but it's certainly an option. Okay, there's the check as I explained. Might still not be a bad idea to try f6 here, although knight takes tempos the queen. I don't know. Could sacrifice the exchange. Oh, that's not a rook. My bad. Okay. Okay, bishop h6 seems to make sense. Get rid of that defender by the king. But we still got to get the rooks into play if we want to give a checkmate. That they need to get into action, and I guess this one's going to get in by e2 and swing on over to one of these squares. Okay, that looks risky, but f6 comes to mind again. I don't know. White could threaten mate, and then black hangs on. I don't know. Could get cramped here for black. Well, let's see what happens. Now he offers the queen exchange, the one he could have had much earlier, it seems, and still had his queenside activity. And white doesn't want any part of that, and offers to black to run his king somewhere. So black's got to make up his mind here. There's only 3 legal moves. h8 and h7 just look bad because of the threats. The rook will go to e2 and run over here. The f8 could run into trouble. Let's see. Knight h5. Now we're trying to prepare f6. Gonna have to make some flight squares for the king here in a minute. I don't know if this is all forced or if there are better moves. I'm just kind of playing around. And maybe black survives this. I don't know. Well, let's go back. Oh, king h7, just asking for it. Okay, what happens? Well, naturally, rook e2. I would think a player would, if you're playing black here, and look at the time on the clock. Black has 30 minutes left. White's been taking his time, so black has been playing quickly. So how much time did he take to decide on king h7? The clock goes from 30 to 57, 30 to 30:57, so he spent 18 seconds on that move. I can't explain. I just don't understand. You're attacked. You're in check. Anybody can look at this and say, "Gee, if king h7, white's close to a thematic mate." We all know how to mate with 2 rooks. Well, in this case, the queen is acting like a rook. King h7, rook e2 threatens mate. What do I do? Well, that's what black did, and white just won the queen. How could black not see this? Well, if he'd spent his time, he would have seen it. Sorry, black, you got to slow down. So let's back it up in the remaining time. The rest of the moves, well, let's just run through the moves. We'll see what happens, and we'll back up real quick. White stopped black from pinning his queen. There's f6, something I've been calling for a long time. Threatens a check down here, threatens the knight. White's winning. Check there. Oh, look at this. Knight forks on either square. Gruesome. And black had enough. Okay, let's back up. Okay, all you have to do is analyze and see moving king h8 or h7 is a disaster, and if anything, try your luck here. Worst that's going to happen is white's going to find a checkmate or a decisive win of material, but if that's the case, then the error was already made. Well, great game by white. Sorry, black. Slow down. Next time, better luck to you. Thanks, everybody, for your time. Hope you enjoyed this.